For thousands of years, the Indian subcontinent was a geopolitical jackpot. Long before modern borders, this was a massive expanse of wealthy, diverse terrain that seemingly every ambitious ruler on Earth wanted to claim. The first major players to lay roots down here were the Indo-Aryans. Leaving Afghanistan in search of arable land, they pushed south and settled across northern India, setting the stage for organized civilization. But settling the land and controlling it are two different things. Control arrived with the Mauryan Empire. Guided by the strategic intellect of Chanakya and the military muscle of Chandragupta, the Mauryans swallowed up competing factions to establish a unified grip on the north. They succeeded by bringing a system to the chaos, by establishing a rigid administrative framework, drafting texts on statecraft in Sanskrit, and formalizing the economy. The Mauryans set the rules of the game. They proved that to hold India, you needed an organized machine. That machine reached its peak under Emperor Ashoka. He expanded the empire's borders through brutal campaigns, most notably the Kalinga War. But the scale of the bloodshed broke him. Ashoka pivoted to Buddhism, enforcing policies of extreme nonviolence across his entire domain. This created a severe vulnerability. The state accumulated immense cultural wealth and spiritual prosperity, but entirely neglected its military readiness. A society taught to abhor weapons rapidly became a demilitarized, complacent target. The collapse didn't even require a foreign army. The Mauryan Empire was decapitated from the inside when its own military commander, Pushyamitra Shunga, realized the throne was defenseless. He assassinated the king and seized control. A sword left in its scabbard for too long inevitably invites a new wielder to take it. In ancient geopolitics, extreme pacifism without a standing defense is a fatal mathematical error. This pattern of blind spots repeated itself throughout history. Down south, the Chola Empire secured the longest-running dynastic reign in the region, pulling in staggering amounts of wealth and maritime influence. Yet they became obsessed with their own legacy. The Cholas poured resources into constructing monumental heritage sites and towering temples. Focusing so heavily on carving stone, they ignored the security of their borders. Up in the north, the Gupta Empire created India's intellectual golden age. Scholars like Aryabhatta and Kalidasa pioneered mathematics, astronomy, and literature, while warrior kings like Samudragupta held the borders tight. But those strong founders were eventually replaced by heirs who preferred comfort over conflict. Corruption spread, regional governors stopped taking orders from the capital, and eventually the Gupta Empire dissolved entirely from the inside out. Empires rarely die from a single blow. They die when the people in charge prioritize nepotism and vanity projects over the relentless work of actual governance. And when that happens, a vacuum forms. That vacuum pulled in foreign invaders, culminating in the establishment of the Delhi Sultanate. Rulers like Alauddin Khilji weaponized brutality to break the spirit of the communities they conquered. Look at these massive brick foundations, the remains of Nalanda University. Khilji's forces targeted Attutional hubs like this, knowing erasing history subjugates a society. Deep within these walls, invaders burned Nalanda's library, reducing 9 million indigenous texts to ash. Physical destruction also extended to centers of wealth. This reconstructed architecture at Somnath represents a grim cycle, a wealthy religious site repeatedly targeted, looted, leveled, and then rebuilt by the locals. This visual, the marble of the Taj Mahal, captures the complex reality of the Mughal Empire. They ruled for 3 centuries, enforcing the punishing zamindari tax system and forced conversions, while also adding gunpowder, biryani, and engineering to the region. The long-term occupation shifted the subcontinent's trajectory. By integrating new systems of taxation, architecture, and language, the invaders created a hybrid culture that persists to this day. Centuries of heavy taxation and oppression eventually triggered a massive internal reaction. The local populations began fighting back. In the west and central regions, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj rallies the Maratha Empire, reclaiming territory from Mughal control and establishing a mobile military state. Up in the north, the teenage Maharaja Ranjit Singh unified the Sikh Empire. He drew an iron line across Punjab, halting any further incursions from Afghan forces. The subcontinent was locked in a chaotic tug-of-war. The Marathas, the Sikhs, the dying Mughals, and regional kings were all so focused on fighting each other for territory that none of them noticed the ships dropping anchor on their coasts. The British East India Company arrived dressed in suits, not armor. They presented themselves as businessmen looking to trade, masking their plan to execute a patient corporate takeover. Their strategy was based on exploiting local chaos. Instead of fighting a unified India, the British handed weapons and money to competing factions, playing the Marathas and the Sikhs against one another until both were weak enough to be defeated. Once in control, they weaponized the economy. They commercialized local agriculture, forced farmers into cash crops, and drained the region's wealth directly back to London, painting the map British blue. The ultimate irony of the British Raj is that India was never conquered by a superior military force. It was slowly divided and dismantled from the inside, while the local kings were busy fighting their neighbors. But to efficiently extract India's wealth, the British had to build thousands of miles of tracks and telegraph lines. In doing so, they accidentally gave a divided population the tools they needed to talk to one another across the subcontinent. Shared oppression birthed a unified resistance. Figures like Gandhi utilized the new national network to mobilize millions of citizens, deploying philosophical and economic boycotts that paralyzed the British administration. Leaders like Subhash Chandra Bose provided the other half of the equation, a fierce militant push that made it clear to the colonizers that their time was up. The scale of these crowds on August 15, 1947, shows the result. The collective pressure from every corner of the country finally forced the British out, allowing a unified nation to breathe free air. The modern Indian nation is the final product of this 1,000-year cycle. It stands as a unified state built from the debris of failed empires and the realization that survival requires looking past internal divisions.